Thank you so much, Lara, for joining us here. And in a real elevator pitch, a real quick 30 seconds, tell us about Publicist.
So we connect brands and agencies to source, hire, pay marketing contractors, advisors, full time. So we're really a facilitator of talent.
COVID-19 is still very much top of mind. It's a pandemic. It's like, what, 3 years, but we really hoped it would have gone somewhere by now, and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere. Tell me from your perspective, from where you sit, how do you see the pandemic having affected your field and your area? What challenges have you had and what opportunities as well?
So we launched Publicist in May of 2020, and so we've never known this business outside a pandemic, which is was a very interesting time to start a company. What we have done and what we've seen over the last 2 years is companies are downsizing their core teams and they're really relying on outsourcing fractional workers, freelance workers. And I think it goes both ways. And so the great resignation has allowed talent to take a step back and actually decide what they value and where they want to work and what standards they want to uphold their employers to. And so I think what's been really interesting is some of the trends we've seen. We see this huge demand for temp to perm. So uh, both agencies and companies hiring fractional workers at 40 hours a week for 3 to 6 months. And then it's almost like dating before you get married, right?
Yeah.
You want to decide that it's a good fit, not just, and I think, pre-pandemic we saw that the power was held from the employer, but I think that what one of the great trends we've seen in the pandemic is that talent holds the power, and they can uphold the people they're working for to the standards that they've now decided that, I value X and I want to contribute to Y mission. And so that's probably the biggest thing that we've seen.
Okay. What are some of the opportunities? We spoke about the challenges. What are some of the opportunities you see and the future, where the future of almost like remote work, we could say?
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts here. And so one is this concept of hyper specialization. And I think what's really interesting about the communications and marketing category is it is growing both vertically and horizontally. And what I mean by that is industries are growing from, the emerging fintech avenues to different lanes in healthcare. And I think the skill sets are growing as well. And so, there are things like go to market specialists for crypto coins, or we've seen recently, PR specialists for vaccines is a huge trend that we've seen. And I think what is an opportunity is it allows for people to be hyper specialists in lanes. And so 10 years ago, I think that people were often hiring for generalists, but now hyper specialization is a huge trend and everyone is a specialist. Um, Let me think, what's another trend we're seeing? I mean, an obvious one is remote work and the ability to, be a solopreneur and run your back office remotely from, I mean, you're from Barbados, I'm in Puerto
Yes.
Rico right now. And I think that, a few years ago, had you said that to people, they never would have believed anyone.
Yes, you're right. Years ago, we would have had to fly. We'd either have to meet, I come there, or you come here, or we meet in some fantastic middle ground and have a face to face. But no, virtual and technology has taken over everything. Do you see technology and or dependent use of technology as we move to remote work, as we move to remote meetings and hiring and things like that? Where do you see technology fitting in, and would you offer the advice to young folks coming up to have technology and what's the word, be very adept with technology as part of their skill set? You're no longer just a comms person or HR person or a PR person.
I think absolutely. And I think that, the Gen Z and millennials or younger millennials were absolutely born into this generation of technology. So I do think so. And particularly as it pertains to these solopreneurs and these freelancers, I think the amazing thing about technology has allowed so many people to go from full time to, these solopreneurs or these businesses of one. And what I mean by that is, again, 5-10 years ago, it was really hard to start your own business. And I think with workflow tools, I mean, like we have on the platform, we're allowing for talent to pitch on new business. We're allowing them to have their back office on platform. So things like sending invoices, contracts, tax forms. I think the barrier to entry for freelancers used to be a lot harder than it is now. But with platforms and with technology, it's an easier barrier to entry, that's for sure.
Okay. And that actually makes a lot of sense. And I think that with the pandemic and with the move to remote work, I mean, even here in Barbados, we were one of the countries that had a welcome stamp, a welcome visa stamp for folks to come. I think it was like about 12 to 18 months. And, you can work remotely from here. Solid Wi-Fi, good weather. You're in Puerto Rico, so good weather, and just the ability to decompress and to take a mental break while still working. Years ago, that would have been unheard of. But now I think the technology and the way countries have adapted to the pandemic really offers a lot more opportunities for people coming in. How has well, you said you started your business during the pandemic, but it has evolved. 2020, between 2020 and 2022, things have changed dramatically. We've got vaccines now. Like you said, countries are evolving their travel protocols and their entry requirements. How do you see your business growing and staying relevant, whether the pandemic finishes, and fingers crossed it finishes real soon, or if it drags on for a few more years? How are you going to stay in the game?
Yeah, so I mean, our mission is to really empower marketers and communications professionals, allowing them creative and economic opportunities. And one of the really interesting things on platform that we're seeing right now is, of every time a client posts a project, we allow them to either opt in for that person to be remote or not remote,
Ah,
remote or in person rather. Over 95% of projects are remote. They really don't care where people are. They're really focused on the talent. And so, to answer your question on how we will continue to evolve, I mean, right now we are in the US, the UK, and Australia. We will go region by region. We will continue to roll out workflow tools both for supply, so the marketers and the communications professionals on platform, so they can really do all of their business, and then for a suite of workflow tools as we particularly start to sell into more and more enterprises.
okay, yeah, so good. So it seems like you really have a solid plan and a business, because so many businesses also started in the pandemic, but we've seen quite a few of them lose relevance and not being able to pivot,
Yeah,
as things have changed because the pandemic has
exactly.
changed.
Yeah, and look, one of the things that when we launched, our immediate need was freelance and fractional talent. That was the platform that we launched. But as we've seen, and to your point about companies bouncing back, we're now doing full time, we're now doing advisory. So, really, any kind of talent persona from freelance, fractional, advisory, full time, we have available, just because that is, people are going back to wanting to hire people full time as well.
Right. Yes, we're starting to see folks go back into office either full time or on a flexible schedule, and everyone whose fingers were crossed that we could work remotely full time, we can see that is starting to change, especially as vaccines have, the vaccine uptake and numbers drop in terms of the cases. So, any last words? Anything you want to say what is your greatest takeaway, what is the greatest lesson rather that you have learned as a new company who has boomed and expanded within the pandemic? What have you learned, and what advice would you give to folks out there listening in?
I think the greatest thing I've learned, as we launched a startup in the pandemic, is hiring much smarter people than you to really own things. I think a lot of people are bootstrapping. We have raised 2 rounds of funding now, and we won't stop there. So I think really hiring, whether it's you can't be good at it. You can't be good at everything, right? So you need to really find what your superpower is and then delegate what you're not good at, because you can't be good at everything. And so I think, um, yeah, that's probably my piece of advice, is to hire much smarter people than you are, and delegate where you can.
Okay, thank you, Lara. It was so great chatting with you and for sharing your experiences and your knowledge to all the folks listening to Fuse. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great to be here.